we've got Tuesday coming up. We've got this big election. One of the things that was interesting, I remember speaking with a guy who's living in the United States but was here temporarily, and he said, Eric, he said, one of the things I think that's funny about elections in the United States of America, he goes, your whole country goes nuts. And he said, but ironically, where I live, overseas, he said, nobody pays any attention to the American elections. And it made me have this perspective that really, it's a big deal for us, but the world carries on and things move on in that. But we want to pray and we want to lift up, and in particular where my heart is really whatever happens with the election happens, but what I pray is that there would be peace. Because to me the other day, a friend of mine posted a picture on social media of businesses that were boarding up, not because there's been rioting, but because they're assuming there will be rioting after the election. And that's really a bad place to be. So can we just all bow our heads, and I'm going to pray for this service this morning and pray for our country, because whatever happens, I pray that we would be an example to the world. Whether we're happy with the election results or not. One of my things that I'm hoping for is I'm hoping whatever happens, we'll know soon, because I have a feeling with all this mail-in balloting that it could take a while. If those of you remember elections in the past where we were recounting things in Florida, and that was just one state, and I thought, oh my goodness gracious, what if this goes on across the whole country? So let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for this day. And Lord, I thank you for the United States of America. Lord, so many people that I've interacted with throughout my lifetime, foreigners who will say that the United States is a beacon of hope and light. And Lord, I pray that at times it feels like that beacon is growing dim. But Lord, I know that across this country this morning, Lord, there are literally millions and millions of people gathering and lifting up your name on high. And so, Lord, I pray that we would realize that right now, we see this group of people here at Hope Community Church, but I think that there are literally legions of believers, Lord, who are calling out to you and praying to you, Lord. I pray for this election, Lord. I pray that as we head into this time that could be tumultuous, Lord, it doesn't matter who wins, it could be tumultuous. Lord, I just pray that your hand of peace would be heavy upon this country. And Lord, that those who seek destruction, those who seek violence, those who seek discord, Lord, that you would silence them. Lord, that you would mute them out. And Lord, that your peace and your truth would prevail. God, we thank you for this time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, listen, this morning, we're going to take a break from the book of John. And this morning, my sermon is entitled The Elected. Because more than just an election, we are elected. We are brothers and sisters. We are children of God. How many of you, that's our greatest hope, that we're children of God? Amen. I want to bring up to you a picture, kind of an interesting picture. This is a guy named Conrad Hayer. Now, Conrad Hayer, yeah. All right, he's not the most welcoming kind of guy looking like that. But here's the thing. When this picture was taken, he was 103 years old. So Sherry, you laugh, but let's see what you're looking like when you're 103, right? I mean, good gracious, give the guy a break. But let me tell you why this guy's kind of famous, all right? He was born April 10th, 1749, and he died February 19th, 1856. He lived to be 106 years old. This picture was taken when he was 103. But here's his claim to fame. He was an American farmer, a veteran of the American Revolutionary War, who served under George Washington. He is notable as being the earliest born person to have been photographed. Now let me explain that, say it one more time. He is the earliest born person to be photographed. We do not have a photograph of anyone born before 1749. This is him. He's not the oldest person. People say, oh, he's the oldest guy photographed. No, he's not. He's the oldest person in regards to the year he was born, 1749. During the American Revolutionary War, Heyer fought under the Continental Army under the command of George Washington. He was discharged in December 1776. After the war, he returned to Massachusetts, where he made his living as a farmer until his death in 1856. He was a farmer for 80 years, into his hundreds. John, how would you like to have a guy like that working for you? Good, great. Cheryl's going, no. Farmer for 80 years. Well, now here's the thing. Conrad lived under 14 presidencies, including our first president. So here's the presidents that he lived under. George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson, Martin Van Buren, William Henry Harrison, John Taylor, James Polk, Zachary Taylor, Millard Fillmore, and Franklin Pierce. 14 presidencies. Now, I wanted to have a little bit of fun and look at presidencies that maybe you voted under. And we'll just go back in time a little bit. So obviously, let's look at the first picture here. We have President Trump and we have Joe Biden. Now that election, how many people have voted or plan on voting Tuesday? Okay, so a lot of people voted Tuesday. All right, let's go back 4 years prior to that. We've got Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. How many people voted in that election? Okay, we're still going strong. Let's go back a little further, 2012. We've got President Obama versus Mitt Romney. How many people voted in that election? We're still going strong. All right, 2008, John McCain versus President Obama. A lot of people voted in that. 2004, George Bush versus John Kerry. All right, a lot of people voted in that. 2000, George Bush versus Al Gore. A lot of people in that. 1996, Bill Clinton versus Bob Dole versus Ross Perot. All right, look, Ed's a brave soul. He told me he voted for Ross Perot. And to be honest with you, I was young then, but I remember thinking back that out of all this stuff, when he would talk about money, he made sense. Because remember, he'd have those little charts, and he'd have the pointer, and he'd say, now look at here. You're bringing in a lot this money, you're spending this much money, not working. Yeah, this doesn't work in the United States of America. You know, and I, for whatever reason, I'd go, I'm going to vote for that guy. So Ed, you know, he lost by a lot, but he had 2 votes. You and me, we were in it hardcore. All right, so let's keep going. 1992, Bill Clinton, George Bush, and Ross Perot still hanging in there. All right, 1988, George Bush versus Michael Dukakis. Yeah. 1984, Ronald Reagan versus Walter Mondale. 1980, Ronald Reagan versus Jimmy Carter versus John Anderson. John, did you vote for John Anderson in that election? All right, 1976, Jimmy Carter versus Gerald Ford. The numbers are starting to thin out here a little bit. All right, 1972, Richard Nixon versus George McGovern. And was that, you said that was your first one? Okay. All right. 1968, Richard Nixon, Hubert Humphrey, and George Wallace. How many people voted? Whoa. We're down. Gene, you voted in that one? All right. Here we go. 1964, Lyndon Johnson versus Barry Goldwater. We've got a few still hanging in there. All right. 1960, Richard Nixon versus JFK. Still going on, right? 1956, Dwight Eisenhower versus Adlai Stevenson. You guys voted in those. Wow. This is fantastic. And then the only one I went back to is 1952, which ironically is the same 2 candidates. So in 1952, voted in 52? I don't think so. Wow, that's fantastic. Let's give him a hand. All right. But now, moving forward, let's think about our buddy Conrad. Now, Conrad lived through 14 presidencies. Now, historians will say that out of the 14 presidencies he lived in, 5 of them were considered 5 of the worst presidencies in the history of our country. 7 of them were considered 7 of the best, and 2 of them were in the middle. So right off the bat, now the good thing is the first couple presidencies were some of the best, so at least we got off to a good run, and then we had kind of a rough thing. Now even in our own day and age, I'm sure that we can think of like I think, Ida, if you think back to different elections, you could think, hey, I thought this president did a good job, maybe not so much with this one. It goes back and forth. But here's the important thing that we all need to keep focus on. Presidents, just like what Conrad experienced, come and go. But in Hebrews it says that Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. How many of you just want to clap when you hear that? Yesterday, today, and forever. Because even in my own lifetime, I can think back to things that I think, I wasn't real crazy about this president. I thought this president did a good job. Boy, if Ross Perot would have been, like I can think these different things and they go back and forth. But Jesus always brings me back and says, Eric, but I'm the same yesterday, today, and forever. So the things around you on the earth may change, but I'm constant. And there's a wonderful feeling about that. And there's a wonderful sense about that. Now, I'm going to tell you that in all my years of being a pastor, as we come into election years, people say to me, well, what's the church's position? What do they stand on this candidate? What do they stand on that candidate? A lot of pastors come out and very boldly say, hey, I've literally heard pastors say, hey, our expectation is you vote this. Our expectation is you vote that. But here's where I struggle with those things. And I'm not saying those things are wrong, but where I struggle with it is, I don't see anywhere in the scriptures where Jesus talked about that. I don't see anywhere in the scriptures where he said, hey, by the way, love the Lord your God, and when you vote, please. He doesn't say these things. A matter of fact, in Matthew 22, Jesus is questioned about paying taxes. How many of you would have loved for Jesus to answer that question differently? I think everyone should pay taxes. However, if your property taxes in your particular state are unfair, don't pay them. What does he say? Look at Matthew 22:17. Jesus says, tell us therefore, what do you do? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? What did Jesus respond? He perceived their wickedness. What they're trying to do is cause problems for him. He said, why do you test me, you hypocrites? Show me the tax money. So they brought him a denarius and they said, whose image or inscription is this? They said to him, Caesar. And he said to them, therefore, what? Render to Caesar what is Caesar, render to God what is God. And when they heard these words, they marveled and left them and they went their way. Interesting, we're going to hear that word marvel later. They marveled at Jesus' answer. Did Jesus say to pay taxes? Yeah, he said to give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Give to God what is God. Why do I think Jesus answers these questions kind of interesting? Because Jesus is always interested in the heart. How many of you have heard someone say something, but you know in their heart they don't believe it? Another example, people say, yeah, but what about when he went into the temple and he overthrew the tables and all that stuff? That had nothing to do with government. It had to do with religious leaders. It had to do with people like me that Jesus was upset with. And he made a whip and he pulled over the tables and he did all these things. But think about this, in Matthew 5, in one of his teachings, Jesus said, hey, and if someone tells you to carry their things for 1 mile, what did he say? Carry them for 2. Now, where would that come from? Well, a Roman soldier had privilege that in any time he could go to someone and he could say, hey, you, come here and carry my stuff. And by law, that person would have to carry it 1,000 paces, which is about 1 mile. Jesus said, if you get asked to do that, don't carry it 1, carry it 2. Guys, I'm not sure, but I'd be willing to bet that this happened to Jesus. I'd be willing to bet that Jesus, remember, for 30 years, we don't know a whole lot about his life. And it is very possible that somebody went up to him and said, hey, you, carpenter, come and carry this stuff. And what did Jesus do? He carried the stuff, and he started walking, and he started talking with that Roman soldier. And then the soldier went, wow, it's been kind of interesting talking, but you've served your duty. No, I'll go another mile with you. Can you imagine that? the Lord of all creation, and he's carrying some soldiers' stuff. I like to think that that happened. And I wonder when I get to glory if I'm going to meet a Roman soldier who says, yeah, you want to know how I met Jesus? I ordered him to carry my stuff, and the Creator did. And I encountered him. Guys, let's open up our Bibles to Luke chapter 7, verse 1. I share this today because we get very wound up in these elections, and we get very wound up in the leadership of our country, and it is very important. I think if you look at local, like township, county, state, the federal level, all the way up to the president, there might be, 10, 20,000 people in leadership of this country. It's very important. At the same time, the leadership of this country might say, hey, listen, we're leaders, but there's 328 million of you. In other words, we get very wound up in who's going to get elected. I think maybe we need to look at who's doing the electing. So let's look at Luke chapter 7, verse 1. 3 for the road, number 1. No one is perfect, and every relationship has complications. No one is perfect, and every relationship has complications. Let's look at chapter 7, verse 1. Now when he concluded all these sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. Capernaum is a small city. It's right near the Sea of Galilee, a very small city. And he says, a certain centurion's servant who was dear to him was sick and ready to die. So when he heard about Jesus, he sent elders of the Jews to him, pleading with him to come heal his servant. And when they came to Jesus, they begged him earnestly, saying that the one for whom he should do this was deserving. For he loves our nation, and he built us a synagogue. Now here's an interesting interaction. Jesus comes walking, here comes these Jewish people, Jewish elders. And they say, Jesus, we need you to do something. There's this Roman centurion, and he has a servant who's ill to the point of death. Heal him. He's deserving. And somebody might say, well, why is he deserving? And they would respond, well, because he loves our people, and he built us a synagogue. You know, one of the things I think when we look at scriptures is sometimes we look through them through our perspective, but for a moment, I want us to try and look at it through Jesus' perspective. Because I want you to think of this request through his mind, through his eyes, through his ears. Because if you think of it that way, if I were Jesus, I might be thinking, okay, he's deserving. First, let's look at the Roman centurion. To become a Roman centurion, you enlist in the Roman army, and you're a foot soldier. To get to a centurion ranking, you have to prove yourself as educated. You have to be able to read and write and instruct others. Sounds good. You also have to have experience. Now listen, experience is really important in any field. But when someone is experienced as a soldier, what does it mean? They've been in battle. And battle is kind of a nice way of saying what? They've killed people. They've killed people. You know, you see interviews with people who are like Navy SEALs, and they'll talk about sniping. They'll talk about killing people. And they'll say, listen, at first it's hard. But then you got to realize that you're killing people who are trying to kill people you care about. And as soon as you get that perspective, then he says, then it's not hard. But I want you to think about that. You see how many soldiers come back from that kind of war and they need therapy? Why? Because I don't know that God deep down inside trained us to want to be doing this kind of thing. And so this guy needs to be educated. He needs to have experience. He needs to be proficient in weaponry, which means he knows how to fight. He knows how to do these things. And guess what? The Romans brought a lot of civility into the world. They did a lot of structure and government and stuff like that. But how did they get to that position? Through brutality. They conquered. and they ruled with fear. And the reason that they crucified certain people, they would crucify them right outside the town. Why? And why did they put a sign over the top of them? Because if anyone was thinking of doing anything, they would go, look what happened to him. You ever wonder why when people were being crucified, they said that the Roman guards stood guard over them? They stood guard over them so that none of the family members could try and kill them and put them out of their agony, because they wanted them to suffer. And this guy, I'm sure, has had a hand in that. And Jesus knows that. And yet the Jews are saying he's worthy. And Jesus is thinking, really? You know what this guy's done? Furthermore, Jesus might be saying, hey, listen, guys, before the end of your lifetime, do you want to know what those nice centurions are going to do? You guys are going to uprise and you're going to push back against the Romans. And you're going to push them out of Israel. And guess what they're going to do? They're going to come back in hundreds of thousands. And they're going to surround your city. And they're going to starve you out. And when you lower your defenses to try and negotiate peace, they're going to come in and they're going to kill everyone. And they're going to burn your city to the ground and destroy all your temples. That's these people that you think are deserving. This is what Jesus knows. Then on top of it, the Jews are pleading with him, and Jesus is saying, wow, you think this guy's deserving? I don't think he's deserving. And furthermore, all of you who are pleading with me right now, in a short time will be standing in a courtyard yelling, crucify him. So do you ever think things through the way Jesus might have heard that request and went, this is what you want me to do? No relationship is perfect, and no candidate is perfect. It's complicated. It's hard. Every elected official has flaws or viewpoints that are undesirable. One of the things that I think hurts us in the United States, and we laugh about like when Ross Perot and stuff like that run for president, but I think when we have a two-party system all the time, we tend to think one is righteous and the other one is like satanic. And we get polarized in those areas. And sure, that's what Satan wants, because what does Satan want to do? Divide and what? Conquer. What did they say in Philippians? That Jesus Christ, what? Would protect our heart and our mind in Christ Jesus. He didn't say, oh, that I'll protect you from the enemies that try and invade you. No, he says, no, you got to watch yourself. I'll give you an example. I think sometimes we need to look at our politicians and look at the heart of what they're trying to do and not always the results. Now, some people go, no, you should judge by results. But here's what the problem is. When a group of this leadership tries to figure something out and they hand it off to the 328 million people, it can get messy quickly. Let me give you an example. The Affordable Health Care Act by President Obama, the Obamacare. President Obama lived the bulk of his life in Chicago and saw tremendous poverty and saw people who were struggling. He said struggling to get insurance, struggling with medical debt. So him and his team worked with this affordable health care. I believe at the heart of it, they really wanted to help people. So they came up with this plan. I was probably one of the few morons in this world who actually read through the whole plan. Yeah. But the heart behind it, I thought, they're really trying to help the most vulnerable. But then it gets handed off to the other 328 million people. And everyone goes, hey, we'll take it from here. And all of a sudden, it starts spiraling out of control to the point where today, for a family of four, the average premium for someone who gets a health plan through this program is $17,500 a year. Now, you can qualify for credits that could reduce it, but it's a $17,500 premium with a deductible of $7,500. That after credits, a family with health concerns that go through things could easily be in $1,500 a month. It's not sustainable for the bulk of society. But I feel like the president has been judged unfairly by the result, but the heart behind it, I think, was good. But it spiraled out of control. Perfect example with this pandemic. The president signed a bill that enhanced unemployment benefits and added $600 a week to unemployment benefits. What was the heart behind it? Well, people were struggling. He wanted people to keep their homes, keep their rent, keep their apartment, be able to feed their family, put clothes on the back, pay the heating bill, do all those things. I think the heart behind it was good. But you get down the line, and I speak with people who are employers who would say, I can't get people to come back to work because they're making more money on unemployment than they would with work. And I feel like they judge unfairly, but the heart behind it was to help. And I think we need to understand and realize that candidates aren't perfect. We need to try and look at what they're trying to do. And then we need to try and look at results and say, hey, how can this be fixed? But it's hard. It's hard. Just in my experience of being a youth pastor, whenever we would do games with kids, I had to have very, very strict rules. Because when you're doing a game with 40, 50, 60 kids, what will happen? They'll all cheat. They'll all break the rules. And that's just kids. Can you imagine giving them a budget of $200 trillion and asking them to figure that one out? Holy cow. Let's keep going. 3 for the road, number 2. Our respect for one another is vital to reach the lost and train our young. Our respect for one another is vital to reach the lost and train our young. Let's look at verse 6. Then Jesus hears this impassioned plea. Instead of all the things that he knows in his mind, what does he do? He goes. This is what I love about Jesus. I'm sure that the angels would look and go, why would you do this? Why would you do this? But Jesus just loves, and he goes, and listen to what happens. Then Jesus went to them, and when he was already not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to him, saying, Lord, you do not trouble yourself, for I am unworthy that you should enter under my roof. Therefore, I did not even think myself worthy to come to you. But say the word, and my servant will be healed. Now, here's what's interesting. This guy, he has people who listen to his orders, but who hasn't listened to his orders? The Jewish elders, right? Like the Jewish elders come on, hey, good news, he's on his way. And the guy went, no. That's not what I said. Ooh, if you guys were my soldiers, you'd be in trouble. What did I say? I said to you, go and ask him, and he will do it. I don't want this guy here under my roof, and I'm not worthy to go to this guy, because you know what? I think this guy has a little bit of inkling of who Jesus is, and I also think this guy has had nightmares about who he is. I'll never forget some friends of ours when I was younger, young family, husband and wife, small child, and my mom used to sit and watch this child after school several days a week. The family sold their house and they were moving, and the 3 of them moved into our house for just a couple of weeks as like the house was settling. They had to get into their new home. One night, middle of the night, screaming in the house. And it wasn't the child, it was the husband. Screaming. I had never heard a man scream like this. And I woke up, and I remember my mom coming in and she said, just go back to bed. Just go back to bed. The next morning, I remember I said to my dad, I said, Dad, why was Mr. Glenn, what was going on? And he said, Eric, I don't know everything, but Mr. Glenn was in Vietnam, and I think some things happened there pretty bad. And his wife told my mom later on, she said, just every now and then, out of nowhere, he'll wake up. And she said, literally, the bed will be soaked with sweat, and he'll scream. And she'll say, just tell me. And he goes, I can't tell you. I can't tell you. But this was in 1980. He'd been out of the war for years. And this guy says, no, I don't want him here. And a lot of people think he's being arrogant. I don't think he's being arrogant. I think he's going, no. There's things about me. There's things I've done. I didn't get to this position by being a good guy. They wanted something done, something awful, and I went and did it. But now my heart is breaking because somebody I care about is suffering. And can you do something? Therefore, I did not even think myself worthy to come to you, but say the word and my servant will be healed. Verse 8. For I am a man placed under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to one, go, and he goes. And I say to another, come, and he comes. And to my servant, do this, and he does it. How many people have ever been to the tomb of the unknown soldier? It's guarded. It doesn't matter if it's raining. It doesn't matter if it's snowing. It doesn't matter if it's 110 degrees out there. There is a soldier there, standing 24/7. Christmas morning, when you're sitting there with your family, there's somebody standing there. Why? Because they are men and women under authority. And somebody says, you guard this, and you guard this, and the only reason you stop guarding is because you're dead. And this guy says, hey, listen, I've been on the battlefield, and I've turned to my soldiers and looked them in the eye and said, run into that, knowing they're probably not coming back. I tell them to go to their death, and they do it. And I tell somebody to come, and they comes. And I tell my servant to do something, he does it. Because I'm a man under authority. Because the same thing that I expect of these people is expected of me. And I serve under Caesar. And Caesar tells me, and I do it. Listen to this. Verse 9. When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him. There's that word, marveled. They marveled at Jesus. Jesus marveled at this guy. It's an interesting kind of guy to marvel at. And turning around, he said to the crowd that followed him, I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel, in the religious headquarters of the world. I haven't found such great faith. Do we model respect? I've been trying to do this thing in my head. It's called respect and move on. Respect and move on. And I'll give you an illustration of what it looks like in my life. Last fall, my oldest son, Austin, he's at Eastern College. Drop him off, everything's set, the finances are all set, everything like that. A day later, I get a notice from the college. Hey, you owe this money effective immediately, or else he's not going to be able to attend classes. And I'm usually on there. Look. I call the school. I said, listen, I feel like I got everything lined up. What happened? And they said, oh, one of his state grants didn't come through. I said, well, what do I need to do? They said, call Harrisburg. Great. How many people ever have to do those phone calls, right? And any parent with college, the Chilmos are tearing up. They know what this is all about, right? The way all this stuff works in college is there's this program called FAFSA, and it links you, the IRS, the state, and the school all together in this demonic relationship. So I call Harrisburg. Your wait time is 19 minutes. Great. Put it on speakerphone. I'm doing my thing. Your wait time is now 39 minutes. After I wait a long time, finally, this guy comes on. Hello, can I help you? Yes, here's my number, my student's account number, my parent account number. I didn't get our state grant, and I'm just a little confused as to why. The guy looks and goes, oh yeah, I have your account right here. He said, we can release that. We just need a copy of your tax return. I said, well, ironically, you have a copy, but if not, no worries. I can download it and I can email it to you. He said, yeah, we do have your tax return right here. I said, I'm sorry, sir, I'm just lost. I don't know what to respond. He said, I'd like a paper copy. I said, okay, can you print it out? He goes, I'd like you to print it out. I said, it's like 95 pages long, like with all the extra stuff on the back end. He goes, I know, can you please print it out? Okay, I'll mail it to you. But in the meantime, is there any way that you could look at it online, and then while you're waiting for the mailed one, you could release the grant because the colleges give me a hard time? No, we can't do that, sir. But if you mail it to me, I'll be sure to look at it. Print it out, mail it to Harrisburg, gets through. I'm telling you, that ate me up for about a week and a half, right? I was ready to drive to Harrisburg. But then all of a sudden, I felt like God said, Eric, respect and let it go. Hey, listen, how many of you are disgruntled with things in leadership of this country in general? There's things. How many of you get sick and tired? Listen, I live in Pennsylvania. I work in New Jersey. I got to deal with 2 governors. Do you know what that's like? It's brutal. And they never agree with each other. And in things they do, it's like, wait, what? But then somebody said to me, hey, Eric, if Governor Wolf called you up today and said, hey, Eric, I decided I want you to be governor of Pennsylvania. Would you take the job? No. No. How many of you have ever really complained hard at somebody about something they're doing, and then they do the worst thing in the world? Hey, would you like to run this? Well, I don't know. I remember years ago at our old church, there was a woman running VBS, and some parent was just disgruntled about everything, and she's just reaming this girl out about VBS. And this girl, she's like a 24-year-old, just out of college, trying to figure it out, and she's getting ready to tear up. And the girl quietly pulls out, she opens up her notebook, hands this big thing, and goes, you can run this. And all of a sudden the woman goes, oh, no, I think you're doing a good job. I was just thinking that maybe I could. And then I decided, hey, come over and say, hey, you know what? I actually think you should run it. You have a lot of thoughts on it, and you're very passionate, and you're the type of person we need in leadership. Let me go talk to the head pastor. I'll be right back. And then all of a sudden, the woman turned very angelic and was praying for this girl. But we need to respect and move on. We need to try and figure out what it is we want to make a stand for. And there's things that we might disagree on. There's things that we might not want to do. There's places we have to go and things. But guys, we got to figure this out. We got to figure this out, or else it will eat you up. So guess what? The Harrisburg thing, I can tell you now that I look back at it and I laugh. And if next year they withhold this money again, I'm not even going to call. I'm just going to print out 80-some pages, and I'm going to mail them with a little smiley face on it. Thinking of you. God bless. Visit us at Hope Community Church. 3 for the road, number 3. Never underestimate God's mighty hand. Never underestimate God's mighty hand. So Jesus responds and says, listen, I've never seen anything like this. I hope that when Jesus looks at me, that he says, I've never seen anything like this, and it's a good thing. Rather than, boy, that's obscene. Verse 10. And those who were sent, returning to the house, found the servant well who had been sick. I've heard people preach on this before, and they say, hey, let's talk about Jesus speaking with the Roman Centurion. Do you know what the ironic thing is? Jesus never spoke to the Roman Centurion. It was all through in-betweens. And in the end of it, the Roman Centurion had tremendous respect for Jesus. And I think Jesus went, I can respect that. I can respect that. And when the guys came back to the centurion's house, they said, hey, Jesus is going to heal him. And the centurion said, of course he is. He's over there making us some pierogies. He's healed. Well, did you think it was going to? Of course it's going to happen. He's a man under authority. He's under God. Which that could get him in trouble with Caesar. God moves. There's nothing in this world that just the mere moving of God's finger cannot squish out. I really believe that. I'll never forget years ago seeing a video of Mother Teresa. And there was a civil uprising happening in some of the poorest slums in India. And they show these guys, and they're firing guns up and down, and they're all barricaded behind this. And then, honest to goodness, they showed this on the nightly news. While this is going on and shooting, Mother Teresa starts walking down the side of the road. And one of these guys gets up and stands up and waves like this to the other side and goes, and pointing at her. And the guy comes over and no one will touch her. And this guy keeps trying to block her off, and he keeps saying to her, this is unsafe, this is unsafe. And Mother Teresa says, there are people dying. And Mother Teresa tells these soldiers to start carrying these people. She goes to the other side, and here's these big burly men, and she says, and you carry these people back to my home. And all these guys lay down their weapons. Why? Because when God decides he's going to move, he moves his finger and all of humanity stops. There's nothing we can do. You can't argue it. Why? Because it's the power of God. Everyone loves this passage. 1 Samuel 17, David and Goliath, right? My favorite part of that whole thing is Goliath's speech to David and David's speech to Goliath. Do you remember? David goes towards Goliath, and what does Goliath say? Goliath says, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. I'm going to tear your flesh apart. And he thinks that this will scare David. Now, was David scared? Probably. I'd be, shoot, big dude. But listen to what David responds. You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin. In other words, you've come to me with all of your earthly resources, but my resources aren't of the earth. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts. Do you know what the Lord of hosts means? It means that the Lord commands the armies of the angels. In other words, Goliath thought, oh, I'm fighting against Israel and they're scared to death of me. And David went, no, you're not fighting Israel. You're fighting the Lord of hosts. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the army of the angels, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. David says, listen, this isn't between you and me. This is between you and him. And he's decided to bring me into the mix. And by the way, I don't need a sword because I'm going to use yours. And I don't need a shield because I'm not going to get hit. I got something planned. And God's going to supercharge this stone and I'm going to sink it into your head. Why? Because he commands the Lord of hosts. Do you understand that that's who we serve? The Lord of hosts? Yes. We are elected by the Lord. In 1 John 2:17 it says, but the world is passing away. But we live here, but we're going there. So when we look at the election, I want to close you with this quote. It's from a guy named John Wesley. John Wesley was an English cleric. He's credited with founding the Methodist Church. October 6, 1774, you can bring that quote up. John Wesley said, I met those in our society who had votes in the ensuing election, and I advised them thusly. 1, to vote without fee or reward for the person they judged most worthy. 2, to speak no evil of a person they voted against. And 3, to take care their spirits were not sharpened against those that voted on the other side. Is that fit for today? Even though it was written in 1774. To vote without fee or reward. All of you spend time before the Lord and ask him to impress upon you who you should vote for. 2, to speak no evil of the person that they voted against. That's when we can all struggle again. I struggle. And in number 3, take care their spirits were not sharpened against those who voted on the other side. I've got neighbors in my neighborhood. Some have this sign up, some have that sign up, and I know that afterwards somebody's going to be upset. And all I want to do is, I don't really care about the election. Because I don't care who somebody voted for. I care about where they're going to spend eternity. Remember when the Pharisees said to Jesus, why don't you come down off the cross? Save yourself. Well, Jesus didn't come off the cross because why? He was dying for sins so that we could live with him. And if you're living and dying for this world, then Tuesday is like the biggest thing in the world. But if you're focused on the Lord of hosts, then just like our friend Conrad, this will just be another presidency. And if President Trump gets 4 more years, guess what? That's my president, and I will pray for him every single day. And guess what? If Vice President Biden wins, then that's my president, and I will pray for him every single day. I was blessed to have a retired Air Force pilot serve with me on a committee when I was on staff with Young Life. And I remember one time we had a committee meeting, and it was pretty terse. It was a hard meeting, a lot of things going on. And at one point, I remember that my friend backed me up on things that I knew he disagreed with. And one of the things he said to me, he said, Eric, he said, in front of everyone else, he said, I will have your back till death do us part. He said, one-on-one, he goes, we'll talk. But he goes, I want you to know I've got your back, and I will never speak a word contrary to anyone ever. I'll tell you what, being a young guy out of college, that sure made me feel good. And that's the kind of people I want us to be. Pray for our country. Pray for our country no matter what happens. Why? Because guess what? People need the Lord. And people are convinced that politics will solve it, and it won't. It won't. Jesus Christ, 2020. That's what we need. Let's have the worship team come up. Let's stand up. I'm going to close this in a word of prayer.